Today, we're going to be breaking down new Houston Texans wide receiver Stefon Diggs and some of his best routes with his time with the Bills. So, on this first example, we're going to be going over this slant-out route here from Stefon Diggs. Great double move route that he ran a ton with the Bills, and this is why his slant-out was so lethal. So, on this play, like anytime that you have to run a double move, we obviously have to make it look like the original move, right? So, if he's running like a post corner, if he's running a slant and go, we have to make the post corner look like a post first. We have to make the slant and go look like a slant first. If I'm running a slant out, I have to make this thing look exactly like the slant route. Now, on a double move, anytime that I'm facing press coverage, the way you want to structure your double move is how you would run the single move route versus press, because we're trying to make it look the exact same. So anytime that I have a DB who's lined up inside shade press, his goal is to stop the inside route, right? So if I had to run a slant and we want him to overcommit to the slant, we would run it the exact same way I would if I was trying to get separation on, right? So Diggs comes off the ball. His first part of his movement, this is something called a prep step. So a prep step is just simply like a quick jab in place, and this jab step pushes him to the outside, and he works something called a slide release. So a slide release is where you slide to the outside, almost on a 45-degree angle, attacking this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip. What we're trying to make him think we were doing with that slide release is taking off and just sliding and going, like you see maybe a Davante Adams, a Justin Jefferson do a lot. So he maybe overcommits, and we could slip under and run a slant, right? And then vice versa. You could hit him a couple times with that, do this slide, and then take off and go run a fade because he might be sitting inside and expecting the slant. The slide release is a great release to use to get into the head of this DB. So when he slides to the outside here, he does his little prep step, slides to the outside, gives this crossover move, and now he's trying to work like we're selling this slant route. So on a double move, whether it's a slant and go, this DB's taught to look for, whether it's a slant and go or whether it's a slant out like this example, this DB's taught to look for two specific things. He wants to see a change in your stride frequency and a change in your speed frequency. So I'm not saying that you have to run insanely fast. We just need to keep the same speed throughout the entire selling of the movement. I'm not saying that you need these like big, overly long strides. I would like long strides, like sprinter strides, to be able to sell the move, but if that DB notices a change in your stride and a change in your speed, that is something called an indicator. And that indicator will let this DB lock up a double move. Is he expecting it? If we're running an actual slant, you better believe it, I'm running hard and I'm trying to cross his face. So when he comes off of this move and he bursts, you see how he's taking long strides, running hard, puts the brakes on, and that's what gets that DB to commit, and that's how we could get that separation from him. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, isn't this a whip route? A whip route is when you keep your hips and your shoulders facing the line of scrimmage. A slant out, or some people call this a blaze out, is where you are turning your back at the break point. So you see how he flips around? That's when you would consider it a blaze out or a slant out. A whip route, you would keep your hips and your shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage. It tries to accomplish the same exact things. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, this takes way too long. Why is he doing a slide release? Why wouldn't he just go? A lot of it has to do with the quarterback's footwork. I think one of the things that made him so lethal was the chemistry that he had with Josh Allen. They were always on the same page. And Josh Allen on this play, I know we can't see this angle, but he's doing a play action pass. So it takes a while to develop. We can't run this slant out and then just sit out there for forever and let this DB to recover. A lot of wide receivers love to work these slower developing releases, but don't know when to use it. It has to do with the timing of the quarterback's drop and the timing of the play. That's a textbook slant out route there from Diggs. So now this next route here we're going to be looking at is a 10-yard out route here versus this outside leverage zone coverage look, and this is Diggs here at the bottom of the screen circled. Now, before we show this clip, and this is one of my favorite reps from Stefon Diggs, if you're a wide receiver, fellas, and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are going to be coming out to 8 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Now, we're going to be coming out to Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Boise. All of those camps, though, guys, are completely sold out. The only camp opportunities we have remaining would be in Detroit, Michigan, and then Los Angeles, California. So, guys, if you're local to one of those 2 cities and would like to train with us, check out that very first link in the description below. Both of those camps will sell out within the next 2 weeks. They're going to be completely full, and then every single camp that we did this year will be sold out. And if you guys want to get added to the wait list for any of our camps, feel free, guys. Very first link in the description below. It's where you can sign up for our Detroit camp and our LA camp and get added to the wait list on all of our other events. So, guys, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. So now, let's take a look at this 10-yard out route here. Now, Diggs does a great job of attacking the inside shoulder with a move called a rocker step. So a rocker step is a move that I would say pretty much every elite wide receiver in the NFL uses. Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams, they all have this move in their tool belt at the top of the route. So let's talk about situations here, right? So we have a DB who's lined up outside leverage and in zone. A DB's goal when he's outside leverage and in zone, whether or even if it's off man, but he's off coverage, he's outside leverage, his goal is to not get beat to the outside. So whether that's a fade route, whether that's a corner, whether that's an out route. So that's kind of a problem, right? If I have to run a 10-yard out route. So how do I structure this route? So if we're in the middle of the field, because the field location is important on this is why Diggs is such a good route runner, because he has such a high football IQ. That's kind of the key with being a great route runner, I feel. You need to have the knowledge of when to execute certain things, and then obviously the skills to be able to put it into play. It's a combination of both, right? So when he's running this route, if we're like on the 50-yard line and you have this outside leverage look and we have to break at 10 and the DB's sitting right at 8 yards, what we would do is we would run hard. We'd put our head down. We'd have long strides, good speed, good pad level, almost like you're pulling a speed sled with a slight lean forward. And you would run hard and you would go attack his inside shoulder and this DB's inside hip. And our goal would be to get him to open up the gate, flip open, and act like we're running a deep route, and then we would put the brakes on and slip under him. Now, that's not necessarily going to work in this situation because we're in the red zone. If I put my head down and run as hard as I can, that DB's not threatened by the deep ball because we only have, 13 yards of space here? So he's not threatened by the deep ball like that. But what he is threatened by is maybe something inside breaking, and that's why Diggs uses this move at the top. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'm running an out route. Wouldn't I want to get to the outside? If you guys burst off the ball, when you try to just run to the blind spot, they call this area right here the blind spot of the DB. If you just try to run around him and cut, when this DB has outside leverage, his goal is to keep his leverage. So he does not want to let you get to the outside. So if we just force it outside and he just widens, I got no space for my quarterback. I have to give the quarterback room to throw me open on any outside breaking route, an out route, a corner route, or a fade route. So he still attacks the inside hip and shoulder because we still got to maintain that space to the outside, but he sells a different type of route. He uses a rocker step. So a rocker step is when you cut in the direction that you are going first. So if you're breaking to the out, you step out first. So it's just essentially a 1-2 or a crossover at the top of the route. So he does this hard cut here, and you want to push off of this initial cut, and this initial cut is quick. It's inside your frame, and when you push off of it, you have to make sure that your hips, your shoulders, your eyes, everything makes it look like we are running a post route or an in route. And if we could do that while attacking that DB's inside shoulder and inside hip, we get him to bite. Now look at the amount of space that we have to the sideline. Even if he's able to recover and it's tight coverage, at least we gave the quarterback a chance to be able to throw me open. And even though that ball was thrown behind, you still see the amount of separation that he was able to get. So guys, running routes, it's all about understanding coverage. It's all about understanding the IQ of how you get open and then having the skills to be able to execute that rocker step move at the top. So let's play this thing full speed again one more time. Great route there by Diggs, probably one of my favorite routes that he ran with the Bills. So now, next example here is going to be kind of a deep, 15-yard out route here from Stefon Diggs. And he's going to be working this route versus an inside shade press coverage guy. So this is actually kind of ideal, right? But a lot of wide receivers still screw this up. And again, it ties into Diggs' skills and his football IQ, which is what makes him a great route runner. So we have inside shade coverage. Okay, fine. I have to go run a 15-yard out route. This DB's goal being inside shade is to take away the inside route. So that's fine because I have to run an outside route. So I'm cool with that. But his goal also is not just to take away the inside route. His goal is to force me to the sideline. Because if I run out of bounds or I'm hugging the sideline, I'm not doing my quarterback any good. I'm not doing myself any good. And the DB did his job. So when I come off the ball, I better make sure that I attack his leverage inside and I do something called getting skinny on my route. And Diggs does a great job of that. So let's play at full speed. So he attacks DB inside, but you see how he's leaning into this DB and almost kind of pushes off a touch at the end of the break. That's not a push off. I call that a chicken wing technique, and we're going to talk about what that is. So guys, the best way to get a DB to hold his leverage or get a DB to move while in press, because anytime you're going up against press coverage guy, we don't want him to just have a clear read on what I'm doing. I want to be able to threaten him somewhat to his leverage. He's inside leverage, so I want to fake like I'm going inside. Make him think we're going where he doesn't want me to go. And that's the best way to get him to move or at least hesitate. So now when he takes this outside release, Diggs very easily at this point could be afraid of the contact and not want to kind of engage with the DB's contact. And a lot of wide receivers are like that. When they get to this point, they will start to run away from this DB and they cut down the amount of field space they have for their outside breaking route. Guys, we have to get hip to hip with this DB. They call that getting skinny. So when you get hip to hip with this DB, now he's right on our hip, but I'm not cutting down the field space. I am staying vertical. So when we get hip to hip with a DB or get skinny, we're doing that so I could do something called stack him. right? I ultimately, anytime I'm against press coverage, you want to try to get this DB trailing your back hip. So you want to get over the top of him. Because if you could get over the top of the DB, you could throw a little rocker step. You could do a little like peek back inside with your eyes. DB maybe commits inside, throw a cut, and then be able to break back to the outside and get easy separation because he is trailing my back hip. Now, if I can't do it, maybe this DB's a little bit faster than me. Maybe he plays it well, whatever the case may be. I could get skinny and use something called this chicken wing technique, which is where essentially you push off of a DB without pushing off. Now, you're going to get called for this if at the break point you fully extend your arm and you like push the DB in his shoulder. But if you just lean into him with your body, and you don't have to be the biggest guy in the world because Diggs is not the biggest guy in the world. You just need to lean into him with your body, use your momentum. And then when you break this thing off, it's a slight nudge with your elbow, with your shoulder to get that DB to move slightly to the inside. But because I took care of him on my stem, because I got skinny, now that slight little bit of separation that I got can turn into a lot of separation if I accelerate out of the break and if I run. So again, guys, it comes down to the technique of the movement, but also knowing when to execute the movement. That's why Diggs is so dangerous, guys, because he's one of the best in terms of football IQ. He knows how to run routes. He knows how to set up his routes, but he has the technique to be able to do it. So let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job by Diggs getting skinny, leaning into this DB, and giving his quarterback room.